Ladies and gentlemen, there is a kind of silence more deafening than anger. Shouting or regret, a silence that only arrives after real love quietly walks away. For someone who thrives on noise, admiration, and control, this silence is unbearable. Tonight, I want to take you inside that quiet to feel the slow unraveling of a life built on illusion, the hidden cracks beneath charm and confidence, and the moment when a narcissist faces the one thing they can't control, the loss of love that truly saw them. Stay with me. This story will challenge everything you thought you knew about love, loss, and transformation. This isn't just a video. By the end, you'll have a powerful new mindset and a completely new version of yourself. A narcissist's sense of control is not built on inner stability or self-knowledge. It is built on reaction, on applause, on being admired, needed, or feared. Control for them is not about leadership or strength, it is about managing how others see them. Their identity depends on external validation, so every relationship becomes a stage, every interaction a performance. As long as they are admired, they feel real. As long as they are desired, they feel powerful. But this kind of control is an illusion, because it was never rooted in genuine connection. Real love does not exist to admire or obey. It sees, challenges, and remains, and that is exactly why it feels threatening. Real love cannot be controlled through charm or manipulation because it is not impressed by masks. It does not respond to ego, it responds to authenticity. For a narcissist, this creates a dangerous contradiction. The very person who offers the deepest connection also exposes the emptiness behind the performance. Instead of feeling empowered, they feel vulnerable, and vulnerability is something they were never taught how to hold. So they tighten their grip, they test boundaries, they withdraw emotionally, believing that distance equals dominance. They assume love will stay because attention always has. But attention and love are not the same. Attention follows ego. Love requires presence. And when presence disappears, love does not fight, it leaves. When real love walks away, the illusion of control collapses. The narcissist realizes too late that they never owned the connection. They were only being trusted with it. Love was never something they possessed, it was something freely given. And once it is withdrawn, no amount of charm, status, or admiration can replace it. That moment exposes the truth they feared most. Control built on illusion cannot survive the loss of someone who loved them without conditions. And when that illusion of control collapses, something even more unsettling takes its place. Because real love was never just affection, it was a mirror. A mirror the narcissist didn't ask for, didn't understand, and never truly wanted. Real love doesn't distort reflection to protect ego. It doesn't flatter the mask or applaud the performance. It reflects what is actually there. And for someone who has spent a lifetime perfecting an image, that reflection feels dangerous. At first, they lean into it. They enjoy being seen so deeply. There is a strange comfort in being known without having to perform. For a brief moment, real love feels like safety. But soon the mirror starts to show more than admiration. It reveals inconsistencies, emotional absences, patterns of avoidance. And instead of feeling exposed in a healing way, the narcissist feels judged even when no judgment exists. That is where fear takes over. Because the mirror doesn't just show who they are with others, it shows who they are when no one is watching. It quietly asks questions they've spent years avoiding. Why does intimacy feel threatening? Why does empathy feel exhausting? Why does validation feel like oxygen? Rather than face those questions, they turn away from the mirror. They accuse it of being critical, demanding, too sensitive. They tell themselves that real love is the problem, not the reflection it offers. But deep down, they know the truth. This love sees through them, and that level of visibility feels unbearable, so they pull back. They diminish what once mattered. They convince themselves that love which challenges them must be flawed. But in doing so, they lose the only relationship that wasn't asking them to pretend. And when that mirror finally walks away, it doesn't just take love with it, it takes clarity. The narcissist is left surrounded by reflections that flatter but never tell the truth. And in that emptiness, they realize something painful and irreversible. The one person who could have helped them see themselves honestly is gone. And once that mirror is gone, the absence doesn't feel loud at first. It feels replaceable. They tell themselves there's never that special. That connection can be replicated. That people are interchangeable. After all, attention has always been easy to find. A new admirer appears, a new spark, a new voice saying all the right things. For a moment, it soothes the wound. For a moment, the emptiness quiets down. But this is where the truth begins to surface. Because what was lost was not attention, it was depth. And depth does not arrive on demand. Real love carried weight. It held history, shared silence, emotional memory. It understood their patterns before words were spoken. It stayed when things were uncomfortable. That kind of connection cannot be summoned by charm or replaced by novelty. It is built over time through consistency, vulnerability, and presence, things the narcissist struggle to sustain. So the substitutes start to fail. The conversations feel lighter. The laughter fades faster. The valida. Time feels thinner, like echoes in a hollow room. They notice it in quiet moments, when no one is watching, when the excitement wears off, when the admiration doesn't reach the place real love once touched. And that's when panic sets in. They realize they can replace faces, but not the feeling. They can attract interest, but not intimacy. They can recreate the beginning, but not the bond. What they lost wasn't just a person. It was a once-in-a-lifetime connection that required the very qualities they avoided giving. The realization hits slowly, then all at once. That love was irreplaceable. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. And real love, once it's gone for good, leaves behind a vacancy nothing superficial can fill. That's when the narcissist begins to understand the cost, not in theory, in experience. In the growing awareness that something rare slipped through their hands, and no amount of admiration, attention, or new beginnings will ever bring it back. And as that realization settles in, something unexpected happens. The ego, which once filled every room, starts to lose its voice. Because the ego can survive on applause, distraction, and replacement. It can feed on admiration and keep moving forward. But the soul cannot. The soul keeps score in silence. And now, with real love gone, the soul finally has space to speak. At first, it's quite almost unnoticeable. A heaviness in the chest. A restlessness that no validation can soothe. The ego still tries to perform, to prove, to win. But the victories feel hollow, the wins don't land the same. The applause fades too quickly because the soul is grieving. This is not the loud grief of heartbreak. It's the deep, unfamiliar grief of something never fully appreciated until it was lost. The grief of realizing that someone loved them beyond image, beyond usefulness, beyond ego, and they didn't know how to meet that love with the same depth. For the first time, the narcissist feels something they spent a lifetime avoiding, emptiness without distraction, and it terrifies them. The ego wants to escape, to distract, to conquer, to replace. But the soul wants to sit in the loss, to feel it, to understand it. That tension creates internal collapse. The very structure that once protected them now feels brittle. They begin to replay moments they once dismissed, small acts of care, patience they never earned, presence they never returned. These memories don't flatter them. They humble them, and humility is painful for someone who built their identity on superiority. Yet this is also where some human emerges, because beneath the ego's noise, the soul recognizes a truth it can no longer ignore. Real love was not a threat. It was an invitation to become more than a performance. Now that invitation is gone, and the narcissist stands at a crossroads between silencing the soul again, or finally listening to what it has been trying to say all along. And when the soul finally speaks, it does so in a space that feels unbearably empty. Because what disappears next is the noise. The messages slow down. The invitations stop. The admiration that once arrived effortlessly begins to thin, not all at once, but enough to be noticed. The room that was once filled with laughter, validation, and attention now feels larger, quieter, colder. This is the silence after the applause. For most people, silence can be restful. For a narcissist, it is confronting. Applause was never just appreciation, it was proof of existence. It confirmed value, importance, relevance. And now, without it, there is nothing to drown out the thoughts the soul has awakened. They sit alone more often, scroll longer, replay conversations that never mattered before. The ego tries to revive the performance, but without a captivated audience, the act feels pointless. There is no rush, no high, just stillness. And stillness reveals everything. In the quiet, they feel the absence of the one person who didn't clap but stayed, the one who didn't cheer but understood. Real love didn't need a stage. It was present in the pauses, in the shared silence, in the moments no one else saw. And now, surrounded by silence, they realize how rare that was. This is when loneliness truly begins. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being unseen despite being surrounded before. The loneliness of knowing that attention filled the room, but connection filled the heart and con. Action is what's missing now. The applause is gone. And with it, the illusion that noise equals meaning. In that quiet, the narcissist comes face to face with a devastating truth. Real love was the only presence that made silence feel safe. Without it, the quiet becomes unbearable. And for the first time, they understand that the loudest thing they ever lost wasn't admiration, it was peace. And in that unbearable quiet, something long buried begins to rise. Because when the noise fades and the ego can no longer perform, what's left is not confidence, it's exposure. The arrogance that once filled every space was never strength, it was armor. And now, with no audience and no real love to soften the reflection, the armor starts to crack. What seeps through is shame. Not the shallow kind that comes from being disliked, but the deep, aching kind that comes from feeling fundamentally flawed. The kind that whispers, if they truly knew me, they'd leave. And the cruel irony is this: someone did truly know them, and instead of using that safety to heal, they pushed it away. Arrogance once protected them from this feeling. It told them they were above reproach, that they didn't need anyone, that vulnerability was weakness. But in the silence, those lies lose their power. Shame doesn't shout. It sits, it waits, and now it has room to breathe. They begin to sense it in fleeting thoughts they quickly try to dismiss. Regret framed as irritation, guilt disguised as anger, a hollow self. Criticism they can't quite name. They may still act superior on the outside, but inside, something has shifted. The confidence feels forced. The charm feels heavy because shame isn't about what they did, it's about who they fear they are. Real love once held that shame gently, never naming it, never shaming them for it. It offered acceptance without exposure. And now that love is gone, the shame stands alone, unbuffered, unsoothed. This is why the breakdown becomes internal before it ever becomes visible. The narcissist isn't collapsing because they were rejected. They are collapsing because, for the first time, they are close to seeing themselves without the armor. And they don't yet know how to survive that truth. And this is where the pain deepens, because hiding no longer works and healing feels terrifying. And when hiding no longer works, control slips through their fingers, not dramatically, not all at once, but in a way that feels deeply unsettling. Because control was never about dominance over others, it was about protecting themselves from feeling powerless. And now, faced with shame, they can't outrun and silence, they can't manipulate. They encounter the one thing they've always feared most, not being able to stop someone from choosing differently. Real love didn't leave because it was defeated, it left because it awakened. And that truth is unbearable. For the narcissist, power came from being needed, admired, pursued, from knowing they could pull someone back with charm, guilt, or promise. But this time, none of it works. The messages go unanswered. The distance remains. The door stays closed. This is not rejection, it's finality. And finality strips them of control. They realize they cannot argue someone back into loving them. They cannot impress their way into trust. They cannot rewrite the ending. For the first time, someone has exercised a freedom they cannot touch. That is the collapse. Because the loss isn't just emotional. It's existential. If they cannot control the bond that mattered most, what does that say about the power they thought they had? They replay conversations, imagining different outcomes. They fantasize about closure, apologies, grand gestures. But deep down, they know the truth. Real love didn't leave in anger. It left in clarity. And clarity cannot be manipulated. This powerlessness forces a reckoning. Either they turn the pain outward, blaming, resenting, hardening, or they turn it inward, asking the question they've avoided their entire life. Why do the people who love me most eventually choose to walk away? That question changes everything, because once someone realizes they cannot control love, they are faced with the only real option left: learning how to deserve it. And once they understand that love cannot be controlled, another realization follows, quiet, heavy, and irreversible. Some connections do not repeat. They spend their life believing people are replaceable because attention always was. Faces change, admiration refreshes, desire circles back in new forms. That belief once made loss feel temporary. But now, standing in the aftermath of real love, choosing freedom, some cracks open. This wasn't just a relationship, it was a moment. In time, real love arrived when defenses were lower, when hope still existed, when the possibility of becoming more felt reachable. It met them before the patterns were fully hardened, before the walls grew taller. And because of that timing, because of that openness, it carried a depth that cannot be recreated later. They start to understand this too late. No future connection will arrive with the same innocence. No one else will offer patience without memory, faith without caution, love without conditions shaped by past damage. That version of love only comes once before it learns the cost of staying, and that is the weight they now carry. They realize that real love didn't leave because it stopped caring. It left because it had to protect itself. And in doing so, it closed a door that will never open the same way again. This is not romantic regret. It is existential grief. The grief of knowing that the greatest opportunity for growth, intimacy, and healing has already passed. That the one person who loved them before they were fully aware of their own damage is gone. And suddenly, the future feels different, not empty but narrower. Less forgiving, more conditional. They see now that some gifts are offered only once. And missing them doesn't just change the past, it reshapes the rest of your life. That understanding settles in quietly like dusk. And with it comes a realization they can't escape. Some losses are permanent, not because love disappears, but because timing, growth, and choice will never align the same way again. And when they finally accept that this kind of love will not return, the mind begins to trace backward, not to relive the romance, but to examine the damage. They remember moments that once felt insignificant, messages left unanswered, emotions brushed aside, needs minimized because they felt inconvenient. At the time, it all seemed harmless. Love was there. Loyalty was assumed. Presence felt guaranteed. But real love was quietly keeping count, not out of resentment, but out of self-respect. Every time they chose ego over empathy, distance over dialogue, power over partnership, a small fracture formed, not dramatic enough to notice, not painful enough to stop, but cumulative. And now, in hindsight, those fractures tell a clear story. This is when consequence becomes real, not as punishment, but as understanding. They see that real love didn't vanish suddenly, it was worn down, neglected, asked to survive without nourishment. Emotional neglect doesn't announce itself. It shows up as loneliness in the presence of someone, as feeling unseen while being claimed, as carrying the emotional weight of two people alone. And when that weight becomes too heavy, love doesn't fight, it leaves. That realization stings. In a way, blame never could, because there is no villain here, no dramatic betrayal, just a pattern of absence that slowly taught love it was safer elsewhere. They begin to understand that what was lost wasn't taken, it was forfeited. Not through cruelty, but through complacency. Through assuming that love would stay no matter how little was given in return. This awareness deepens the grief, because now they see that the ending wasn't inevitable, it was avoidable. And that truth carries a different kind of pain. The pain of knowing that what broke the bond wasn't a single mistake, but 1,000 small moments where love reached out and wasn't met. And in the quiet aftermath of that understanding, they reach the crossroads. Because loss, as painful as it is also a teacher. Every fracture, every moment of neglect, every failed attempt to control the uncontrollable brings a choice, decay or growth. The narcissist faces this more starkly than most, because the habits that once protected them, the ego, the armor, the illusions of control now feel fragile and inadequate. And yet, in that fragility lies the first glimmer of possibility. They can continue the cycle. They can harden, manipulate, and seek admiration to fill the void. They can distract themselves, chase illusions, and avoid the emptiness that real love exposed. Many do, and in doing so, they ensure that the same patterns repeat, that the silence grows louder, that the pain never teaches, only repeats. Or they can choose differently. They can sit with the discomfort, listen to the shame without fleeing, feel the powerlessness without fighting, reflect on the moments when love was given freely, and honor that by becoming capable of receiving it in return truly, deeply, vulnerably. Growth is neither easy nor immediate. It asks for humility, accountability, and courage, but it is possible. And the lesson is universal. The loss of real love is devastating, not because of rejection, but because it exposes the self in a way that nothing else can. What once felt like powerlessness can become insight. What once felt like shame can become awareness. What once felt like emptiness can become a space for transformation. In the end, the collapse isn't just a breakdown, it is an invitation. The one who once thought love was something to possess discovers that it is something to become. And in that becoming, the cycle of loss can finally, truly teach. The choice is theirs, growth or decay. And the path forward begins with listening, truly listening to the lessons that only love, once lost, can teach. And now, as we stand together at the edge of this story, there is a truth that cannot be ignored. The journey of a narcissist losing real love is not just their story. It is a mirror for all of us. It shows us the fragility of the heart when it is taken for granted, the cost of ignoring connection, and the power of a love so real it cannot be replaced, or forgotten. We have walked through silence, shame, loss, and the unbearable weight of what was once held and is now gone. And in that journey, there is a lesson that demands attention. Real love is not transactional. It does not bend to ego. It does not linger out of convenience. And it does not forgive indifference indefinitely. It is patient, it is present, and it sees the truth even when the truth is uncomfortable. Losing it forever is devastating, but it is also illuminating. It shines a light on what we value, what we neglect, and what we might never get back if we fail to notice. It teaches us that connection matters more than control, authenticity matters more than image, and growth matters more than fear. The story of the narcissist's collapse is a cautionary tale, yes, but it is also a reminder of possibility. It reminds us that we are capable of change, of reflection, of rising from the patterns that keep us trapped. It reminds us that love is a teacher and its lessons are written not in triumphs or victories, but in moments of loss and clarity. So I leave you with this. Pay attention to what you hold. Cherish the presence of those who see you deeply. Don't wait for loss to teach you the lesson you can learn today. Because when real love comes, and it will, in many forms, may you recognize it, honor it, and never take it for granted. And in that recognition, perhaps you will discover that the greatest transformation begins not after love is gone, but while it is still here,